5 years ago, I stood on a cold, rain-slicked curb, holding a single cardboard box that contained the remnants of my entire adult life. Rain soaked through the thin fabric of my coat, but I barely felt the chill. What chilled me to the bone was the sound of laughter echoing from the glass steps of the office building behind me. My business partner, Hamza, was standing by the entrance in a tailored three-piece suit. He had his arm wrapped tightly around the waist of my first cousin Zara. On her finger, a massive diamond ring caught the gray October light. As Hamza stepped down to his brand new luxury sports car, he paused, lowered his sunglasses, and looked at me standing in the gutter. He tossed his head back, laughed with genuine amusement, and shouted, "Thanks for the seed capital, Maya. Next time you build an empire, make sure you learn how to read the fine print." He slammed the car door, hit the accelerator, and splashed muddy street water directly across my shoes as they sped away to their 5-star engagement party. They thought that was the end of the story. They thought they had outsmarted me, stripped me of everything I had worked for, and left me with nothing but broken dreams and empty pockets. They had no idea that the real game had only just begun. To truly understand how sweet the justice was, you have to understand where Nexacore Systems actually came from. 6 years ago, I spent 18 months living on instant noodles and black coffee in a cramped, drafty studio apartment. I am a software engineer and enterprise systems architect. I had poured thousands of sleepless nights into creating a proprietary back-end logistics platform. It was an algorithmic engine capable of handling real-time freight tracking and supply chain routing for multinational shipping companies. It was fast, it was secure, and it was completely my creation. Then Hamza walked into my life. Hamza had the kind of polished charm that makes people lower their guard. He wore expensive suits bought on maxed-out credit cards, spoke with absolute confidence, and claimed to have deep connections in corporate finance. I was an engineer who preferred writing code over pitching to investors. Against my better judgment, I agreed to partner with him. I gave him a 25% stake to manage sales and client relations, while I retained 75% as the majority owner, technical founder, and managing director. A few months later, my cousin Zara moved to the city, desperate for work after finishing her business degree. Zara was family. When her father lost his job years before, my family had stepped in to help pay her university tuition. When she asked for an opportunity, I welcomed her with open arms. I gave her an administrative role handling payroll, corporate filings, and the routine paperwork that piled up on my desk. I trusted them completely. I believed that while I sat in the dark building the engine, my partner and my cousin were protecting the business. I was completely blind to the fact that they were slowly sharpening their knives behind my back. For 8 months, Nexacore grew at an explosive pace. We secured major shipping contracts. The revenue poured in, and our company valuation skyrocketed. But as the bank accounts swelled, Hamza's attitude changed. He started taking unearned credit for the software during media interviews. He began arriving late to meetings and acting as though he was the sole genius behind our success. Zara changed too. She stopped asking about my health. She stopped thanking me for the bonuses I gave her. Whenever I walked past her desk, she would quietly minimize her computer screen and look at the floor. Then came the morning of October 14th. I arrived at our downtown headquarters at 8 in the morning, holding my coffee and a laptop bag, ready for our quarterly review. When I held my keycard against the electronic scanner, the light flashed red. A harsh, rhythmic beep echoed through the silent corridor. I tried again. Red. Assuming the card had simply demagnetized, I knocked on the heavy glass doors. A moment later, 2 armed private security guards stepped into view. They unlocked the door just enough to block the threshold with their broad shoulders. "Can I help you, ma'am?" the first guard asked coldly. "There's a glitch with my access card," I said, offering a polite smile. "I'm Maya. I'm the managing director." Before the guard could answer, Hamza walked into the lobby. He was holding a leather folder under his arm. Behind him, Zara walked out in an expensive designer outfit, carrying a cardboard box. "Let her in for 5 minutes, gentlemen," Hamza said, his voice dripping with condescending pity. "Let her collect her personal things." My stomach dropped into a bottomless pit. "Hamza, what is this joke? Why are security guards at our front door?" Zara stepped forward. She would not look me in the eye. Instead, She fixed her gaze on the wall just above my head and spoke in a flat, rehearsed tone. Maya, effective 8 o'clock this morning, your operational, executive, and administrative authority at Nexicor Systems has been permanently terminated. I stared at her, utterly bewildered. Terminated? Have you lost your mind? I own 75% of this company. You are an administrative assistant on my payroll. Hamza smiled. It was the wide, smug grin of a predator that had finally trapped its prey. He opened the leather folder and held up a crisp legal document bearing an official government stamp and a notary seal. Not anymore, Maya, Hamza purred. According to this amended corporate resolution, you voluntarily surrendered 70% of your equity to Zara and me for a settlement of $10,000, resigning your position due to severe personal stress. I looked at the bottom of the page. There, stamped clearly in black ink, was my signature. A cold wave washed over my entire body. The room seemed to spin. It was an exact, chilling forgery. You forged my name, I whispered, the words barely making it past my dry throat. Zara, you copied my signature from the corporate registry documents. Zara crossed her arms and looked away, remaining silent. Hamza took a step closer, lowering his voice so only I could hear. Go ahead and scream, Maya. Go ahead and cry. The notary happens to be an old school friend of mine. The bank accepted the transfer yesterday afternoon. The corporate accounts have been moved under my name. Zara used your internal credentials to verify the submission. I will take you to court, I said, my voice shaking with raw fury. I will bring in every handwriting expert in the country. I will tear this company down brick by brick. With what money? Hamza sneered softly. You have $30,000 in your personal savings. We control the company treasury. We have retained the most expensive corporate defense firm in the city. If you file a lawsuit, we will bury you in discovery motions, preliminary hearings, and endless appeals. You will be completely bankrupt within 6 months, living on the street, while we continue to take home millions. He paused, glancing at Zara, and then reached out to take her left hand, lifting it so the diamond sparkled in my face. Oh, and one more thing, Hamza added with a cruel laugh. Zara and I got engaged last night. We're celebrating at the Grand Hyatt this evening. It's a shame you won't be able to make it. The security guards placed the cardboard box into my trembling arms. They pushed me out onto the concrete steps and locked the glass doors behind me. I stood on the sidewalk as the rain began to fall. I stood there as Hamza and Zara drove away in their brand new sports car, leaving me drenched, humiliated, and discarded like a piece of trash. For the first 2 weeks, I could barely sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Hamza's mocking laugh. Every time I looked at my hands, I remembered the sight of my own forged signature on that fraudulent document. I met with 3 different corporate attorneys. Every single one reviewed the paperwork, shook their head, and gave me the exact same grim assessment. You're in the right, Maya, one senior litigator told me gently. It is blatant fraud, but proving it against a well-funded corporation with compromised notaries and fabricated digital audit trails will take at least 4 to 5 years and hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees. They know you don't have the cash to survive the battle. They are counting on your poverty to protect their crime. I walked out of that law office and sat on a park bench for 3 straight hours. I realized I had reached a defining crossroads in my life. I could spend the next 5 years of my youth consumed by bitter, exhausting courtroom drama, draining every ounce of my energy just to fight for scraps. Or I could take the brilliance they tried to steal, step into the shadows, and build something so colossal that it would eventually crush them under its own weight. I chose the second path. And there was one critical detail Hamza and Zara had completely overlooked. They were salespeople. They understood balance sheets, networking lunches, and promotional buzzwords. But neither of them understood a single line of raw code. When I originally engineered the core backend framework of Nexicor Systems, I had structured it on a multi-layered cryptographic architecture. Because the initial development happened before the official incorporation of the company, the master security kernel was anchored to a root developer certificate that required a 5-year mathematical renewal key. When Hamza locked me out, his hired IT technicians changed all the admin passwords. They changed the user access tiers. But because the core framework was so deeply intertwined with the underlying algorithms, They dared not touch the encrypted root kernel without risking a complete collapse of the entire database. They simply saw that the platform was running smoothly, making millions every quarter, and assumed the software was permanently theirs. They did not realize that the countdown was ticking. They did not know that precisely 5 years from the day they kicked me out, the master security certificate would expire. And the only person on Earth who possessed the cryptographic seed to generate the renewal key was me. I never touched their servers. I never wrote a single line of malicious code. I never violated any cybersecurity law. I simply did nothing. I let them drive full speed toward an invisible cliff. In the meantime, I completely vanished from the local tech scene. I moved to a different district, lived under the radar, and founded a private tech venture and asset management group called Aegis Capital. I didn't waste time chasing small local contracts. Instead, I built high-end cybersecurity and automated supply infrastructure for sovereign international logistics consortiums and overseas investment firms. I worked 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. For 5 long years, I did not take a single vacation. While Hamza was posting pictures on social media from luxury resorts in Dubai, buying high-end watches, and renting private yachts to show off his newfound wealth, I was quietly reinvesting every single penny into my growing capital fund. By the 5th year, Aegis Capital was managing tens of millions of dollars in enterprise assets. We had become a silent giant, acquiring distressed tech infrastructure and restructuring failing logistics corporations across the region. Then, just 3 weeks before the 5-year anniversary of my betrayal, my chief acquisitions officer, Marcus, walked into my office. He placed a thick financial dossier on my desk. "Maya, you need to see this," Marcus said. A mid-sized logistics software company named Nexacore Systems has hit a financial wall. Their founders took out massive commercial loans to finance extravagant lifestyles and an overpriced corporate headquarters. Now their core server infrastructure is experiencing severe stability issues, and their top enterprise clients are threatening to terminate their contracts unless they complete a full structural overhaul. I opened the dossier. There was Hamza's name, listed as Chief Executive Officer. He was drowning in unserviceable debt. He had bled the company dry through personal dividends and vanity projects. The technical foundation was beginning to fracture, and because he had driven away all real technical talent, he had no idea how to fix it. They desperately needed a $20 million buyout and rescue package within 48 hours, or their creditors would force them into immediate bankruptcy and liquidation. I looked at the numbers. Then I looked at Marcus and smiled. "Tell the lead investment broker that Aegis Capital will privately acquire and restructure their entire debt portfolio," I instructed calmly. "We will provide the $20 million lifeline to keep the creditors at bay." Marcus looked surprised. "Really? Their balance sheet is an absolute disaster." "Under one condition," I added. "The final restructuring contract must be signed in person, by the founder himself, on stage at the annual Venture Partners Gala this Friday night." The evening of the gala arrived. The grand ballroom of the St. Regis was filled with crystal chandeliers, towering floral displays, and the city's most powerful financiers in black-tie tuxedos and designer evening gowns. Hamza had arrived early. He was strutting through the center of the ballroom like a king who had just conquered the world. He wore an imported velvet tuxedo, holding court near the main champagne fountain, loudly telling anyone who would listen that he had just negotiated a massive multi-million-dollar institutional partnership to expand his tech empire. Zara stood by his side in an emerald silk dress, draped in diamond jewelry, laughing loudly at every joke Hamza made. I walked into the ballroom 30 minutes later. I did not wear an expensive designer gown. I did not wear diamonds. I wore a simple, unbranded midnight blue cotton sari. It was modest, comfortable, and deliberately plain, the exact style of clothes I used to wear when I was working late into the night building the software they stole. I stood near the mezzanine railing, quietly sipping a glass of water, watching them celebrate money they hadn't earned. Hamza eventually turned to walk toward the VIP lounge, scanning the room for the elusive corporate executives of Aegis Capital. As he passed near my table, his eyes caught mine. He stopped in his tracks. A flash of confusion crossed his face, followed quickly by his signature arrogant smirk. He walked directly toward me, hands in his pockets, shaking his head with theatrical pity. "Maya," he laughed, speaking loud enough to draw the attention of several nearby executives. My goodness, look at you. What in the world are you doing here? I looked at him calmly, saying nothing. Zara hurried over, looking at my simple sari with obvious disgust. Maya, did you actually take a job with the venue's catering staff just to get into this room? If you were struggling for rent money, you could have just sent an email to my assistant. You didn't have to embarrass the family by picking up dirty glasses at a high-profile corporate function. Hamza reached out, took a half-empty champagne flute from a passing waiter's silver tray, and extended his hand, dropping the sticky glass straight into my palm. Stay over there with the rest of the little employees, sweetie, Hamza sneered, looking down his nose at me. The real business leaders are here tonight. In about 5 minutes, I'm signing a $20 million deal with Aegis Capital that will solidify Nexicor at the top of the industry. Try not to make a scene when they announce my name on stage. I held the dirty glass, looked at it, and then looked directly into his eyes. Make sure you read every single line of that contract before you sign it tonight, Hamza, I said softly. Hamza laughed dismissively, turned on his heel, and walked toward the stage, still bitter after all these years. Some people are just born to be employees. A moment later, the ballroom lights dimmed, and the master of ceremonies took his place at the podium. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, the announcer's voice boomed through the speakers. Tonight, we finalize a historic restructuring and acquisition agreement. Nexicor Systems will enter a comprehensive buyout partnership valued at $20 million, fully funded and underwritten by Aegis Capital. A wave of applause swept through the hall. Hamza stood up, adjusted his velvet lapels, and stepped onto the lower stage with a broad, arrogant smile, waving to the audience as though he had achieved the impossible. To formally execute this acquisition, the announcer continued, please welcome the founder, managing director, and majority shareholder of Aegis Capital, Ms. Maya Sterling. The room erupted into polite applause. Hamza's smile instantly froze. The color drained from his face until his skin looked like ash. His eyes darted frantically across the room, searching for someone else, praying that it was a mistake. I set the dirty champagne glass down on the table, smoothed the pleats of my sari, and began walking down the center aisle. The spotlight moved away from the stage and landed squarely on me. The crowd parted as I walked. Zara gasped, her hand flying to her mouth, her champagne glass slipping from her fingers and shattering on the marble floor. She grabbed Hamza's sleeve, her voice trembling in absolute terror. Hamza, what is happening? Why is she walking up there? Hamza could not breathe. He stood paralyzed on the stage steps, watching me ascend to the podium. I took the microphone from the host, turned around, and looked down at Hamza standing beneath the bright lights. 5 years ago, I said, my voice steady, clear, and ringing across the silent hall, I was told by the man standing before you that a forged signature and an expensive suit were all it took to own another person's intellect. I was told that I lacked the power and the money to survive in this industry. The entire room went dead silent. Venture capitalists, bank presidents, and corporate directors leaned forward, hanging on every word. Nexicor Systems is completely insolvent, I continued calmly. Their operational infrastructure is failing because the people running it never understood the code they stole. Over the last 72 hours, Aegis Capital has quietly bought out every single bank loan, private line of credit, and commercial lien held against Nexicor. Hamza rushed up the remaining stairs, his face red with a mixture of terror and rage. Maya, stop this right now. This is a confidential commercial buyout. You cannot do this publicly. Marcus stepped onto the stage and handed me a heavy leather folder containing the signed bank transfers. I opened it and looked down at Hamza. I am not here to save your position, Hamza, I said into the microphone. I am here to execute the foreclosure clause. As of 8 o'clock this evening, Aegis Capital has seized all intellectual property, server domains, and operational contracts of Nexicor Systems to satisfy outstanding debts. Your equity has been diluted to zero. Your executive roles are officially terminated. You can't do that. Hamza screamed, his voice cracking in front of hundreds of high-profile guests. The clients. We have 90 active corporate accounts. If you pull the plug, the entire platform will crash, and you will lose everything too. The platform is already dead, I replied quietly. I reached into my bag, pulled out a small, sleek silver flash drive, and held it up between two fingers under the spotlight. 5 years ago, you locked me out of the building. But you forgot that the core cryptographic seed authorizing the master server farm was set on a 5-year timer. That security certificate expires at midnight tonight. In exactly 1 hour and 15 minutes, every server running your platform will permanently shut down. Hamza looked at the silver drive in my hand, and his knees completely gave out. The arrogance, the pride, the condescension, everything shattered in an instant. Right there, on the stage of the St. Regis Ballroom, in front of the entire business elite of the city, Hamza dropped to his knees. He grabbed the side of the podium, tears of genuine panic streaming down his face. Maya, please, he sobbed, his voice breaking into the open microphone. Please don't destroy me. We can share the company. We can do 50-50. Zara was the one who handled the paperwork. It was her idea to forge the signatures, not mine. Please, don't take everything from me. Zara stood at the bottom of the stairs, staring at her husband in absolute horror as he threw her to the wolves to save his own skin. I looked down at the man who had laughed at me in the rain 5 years ago, watching him beg on the floor. I felt no burning anger. I felt no desire to scream. I only felt the clean, silent peace of absolute justice. Tomorrow morning, Aegis Capital assumes direct operational control over the network using this key, I told him calmly. As for the fraud you committed 5 years ago, my legal team filed a formal criminal complaint with the federal prosecutor's office 2 hours before this gala began. The investigators will be waiting at your home by morning. I leaned down slightly and met his tear-filled eyes one last time. Take your velvet suit, Hamza. Pack your desk. And get out of my building. I handed the microphone back to the host, turned away from the podium, and walked down the stage steps. Behind me, the ballroom erupted into a roar of frantic murmurs and stunned whispers. Security guards immediately moved in, taking Hamza by the arms and dragging him off the stage while Zara stood frozen in shock, watching their entire fabricated empire collapse into dust. Real revenge does not require loud arguments, petty insults, or reckless anger. It requires patience. It requires you to stay completely silent while your enemies celebrate what they think they stole from you. You let them build a false sense of security on a foundation of lies, while you quietly build an empire so vast that their entire world eventually depends on your mercy. Justice does not always arrive overnight. But when it finally knocks on the door, it collects every single debt in full.